annual general meeting. We're really happy you could join us this evening. Really excited to show you the things we're working on. We're going to hear from a little bit from the board on a board report. We're going to have a little bit of information on the activities we've been doing. We're going to have a guest speaker and Tom Ivey from DotCooperation. We're going to discuss, thank you. We're going to discuss a couple of things as far as the activities we're working on that we want to move forward with. And we're also going to have pedal people present something for us where they're going to talk about their a recent pricing change that they had. So I just want to start by saying welcome. Thank you again. Really great to be here. And I would just like to invite everyone to put their name in the chat and just say where they're coming from, just in case we don't know already. We have a couple of people who are on the call. We did a little member meeting earlier, but you're welcome to just drop your name in the chat and say, hey, I'm Adam. I'm Executive Director of the Valley Alliance or what have you. And again, welcome. So if you have any trouble with anything, please just put that right in the chat and I'll manage that as we go through, if you can't see the slideshow or whatever. Okay, so we're just going to do a couple of things. I wanted you to see the agenda so you know the flow of our time together. And I also wanted to say that there's no stupid questions here. If you want to stop and ask something, please do. We're much more focused on everyone being on the same page than us moving quickly or anything like that. I love this picture of Stephen Roy, who's one of the founding member of Collective Copies with a May 1st rose. He was really instrumental in forming Collective Copies, which was a founding member of all the associations they could ever be. And they were great and critical for VAWC founding. Okay. I wanted to do a special thanks for a couple of sponsors. You see a lot of familiar names here. The annual meeting has become our second largest important piece for our finances. And I'm really thankful to these organizations for supporting us. And they support us, many of them support us throughout the year. A lot of work. Suzette's been on our board for years from the Neighboring Food Co-op Association. Share Capital has been great. Of course, I worked there, but they were great for us before then. And a number of other organizations here. We also have sponsors that are on a smaller scale, but just as consistent and important. From individual Mary Hoyer, who was at early meetings with the Valley Alliance, on to cross-sector and association collaborations that I'm really happy that VAWC has. So we can try to leverage shared goals and connect on activities. I am so happy to announce that Charity Zeleny is our newly elected board member for the Valley Alliance of Worker Cooperatives. Most of our board are member directors taken from, you have to work at one of the member co-ops. We do have one stakeholder seat that right now is unfilled. We're going to work on that. But thank you, Charity. And since you're here, I'll just put you on the spot in case you wanted to say hi or anything like that. I can also move right along and you don't have to say anything. So I think I saw your just keep it moving. Charity, thank you so much for your contribution to us already. And I'm really looking forward to having you on the board. The next part, we are going to have a little bit of report from the board, and I'm happy to have Larissa Demos with us this evening. Larissa welcome, Kara. Larissa has been our chair for a number of years. Larissa was part of Green Mountain Spinnery for years, and then is a founding member of Flatiron Coffee House, where they essentially resurrected a shutter business from COVID. It's a little more complicated than that, but they saved the business in Bellows Falls, Vermont. They've been doing excellent work. I'm so thankful to Larissa for your energy, Larissa, your leadership, and I just want to hand it over to you so you can give a little bit of the board report.
Thanks, Adam. I'm just going to read what was sent, and I apologize for how I sound. It's been a very long week, and it's Wednesday. Welcome, everybody, our members, affiliates, our partners, and supporters. VAWC has made strides in strengthening our membership with education, engaging government agencies to ease creation of new co-ops, and marketing worker co-ops to the public and business communities. We continue to support the UMass Certificate Cooperative Enterprise through coordination of interns, class visits, and more. Our annual education event has grown in attendance and impact 3 years running, and our VAWC fund continues to support members directly to grow the co-op movement through investment in co-ops and to provide a source of financial participation for our members. This is a special year for us as well, as the first meeting of our cooperators and their supporters that became VAWC was in September 2005 in the kitchen of a member of Collective Copies 20 years ago. Worker co-ops joined together to form a venue led by co-ops to communicate needs and goals in a trustworthy place dedicated to the emancipation of labor, preservation of the planet's life, and to a just, a just economy. In 2024, we will envision a future of the next 20 years. As always, thank you to our member cooperatives for making our work possible. Thanks to our affiliates and partners who allow us to connect our efforts and achieve shared missions.
Thank you, Larissa. And again, I know that Larissa had to do a little on the fly traveling today and yesterday. So I just want to thank you for making time. I don't know if anyone had any questions or thoughts about that before we move ahead with the slideshow. Thanks for the emoji thumbs up, Suzette Snowcob. Okay, so thanks again to Larissa and to our outgoing board members. We talked about this just a moment ago, that the Valley Alliance is a member-owned and run venue and organization. Carl and Suzette have been phenomenal. Suzette, your dedication to us over what must be, I don't know, I think all 20 years is something that I cherish and I'm so thankful for. Carl isn't with us this evening because I believe his spouse's baby is due today or like tomorrow. So Carl couldn't join us, but his time working with us has been also phenomenal. And to have a recent conversion on the board is something we really prioritize. And I'm so thankful that Charity can continue that effort. If you want, you can drop thanks into the chat for Suzette and Carl. It's wonderful that we just got to work with you. We're going to dive into our impact report. And we've got really 4 pillars, and one of those is education. And we spend a lot of time on this. We spend a lot of energy. We've got a number of ongoing long-term relationships that we have, including with the Neighboring Food Co-op Association, with whom we co-founded the Certificate in Cooperative Enterprise at UMass. Anyone who's hosted an intern or an intern was at your co-op, please just raise your hand. Ben can raise. Charity, I don't think you can. Faith, yep, and Suzette. So there's been a number of interns for the Valley Alliance, and we've been able to do a ton of things with those interns, including research expansions, understand ourselves, get research, and try to improve our public speaking and our public events. You can see the other things here. I won't go over everything we did, except to say that I'm really thankful for all our members because we got to write articles about each of you. And in fact, the past intern, Dylan Hatch, was the researcher for that and contacted you, and you gave time for interviews and you gave time for data. And we created these sheets that you can see little snippets of. And we use those to go publish pieces, to send those to legislators during a big year for legislation, and to also send them to secretaries of state. And we'll talk about that in a moment. And thanks to the Cooperative Development Foundation for supporting some of our work with reaching secretaries of state, where we're trying to make sure it's as easy as possible to form any kind of cooperative, but of course, especially worker cooperatives, where that's our expertise. We have worked with the Neighboring Food Co-op Association to found food cooperatives as well, especially multi-stakeholder cooperatives, but we got 2 of those right here in our membership. And I'm really thankful to both of you, Larissa and Rachel, and your co-ops, because we learned a lot about the model that I believe is for the future. In any event, we got to work with those pieces we wrote about each of you to connect with secretaries of state. And we got, because of Larissa's work at Flatiron, it was the easiest organizing we've probably done in years, where I sent one email to the Secretary of State of Vermont and said, "Hi, we'd love to meet with you." And we had a meeting set within 24 hours, and that was a week later. And they talked with us, and we communicated what we have for goals. They invited us to support them in a website rebuild that's happening this year. And we also got to communicate how we want to set up best practices with the articles that we just wrote, so people know that co-ops are really a thing. Again, a lot of times people are showing up for the first time wanting to form a cooperative, and the more information they have, the better. The second thing for education that I wanted to focus on, in addition to those articles and everything, was our annual workshop. And I just want to say again that I'm thankful to so many of you who took time to put together a couple of your own policies and to talk to us about those. Some of those I think seem really boring, but it's something where we're just trying to have a holistic view of cooperatives as something we want to protect and serve in a way that is for the future, for an intergenerational asset, so that these things last hundreds of years. Probably one of the most inspiring things for me was going to Italy, where I met the son of a nephew of a former member who was at this particular cooperative in the 1920s. And at the time, I believe it was 2016. Really inspiring things, where a whole family can have jobs there. So these policies help kind of shore up the vision and the structure and the mission of what our cooperatives are, to say, hey, when you run into some of these issues about workplace safety or finances or managing things like that, you have places to go. And it's great to have that stuff early before things happen, so it doesn't become any kind of personal issue. I did want to report a little bit on finances too. We did just approve our budget again in a member specific meeting before this, which was fantastic. And we're in pretty good shape here. We are a small and mighty organization. Again, thanks to the board and our representatives that are on the call today, because we couldn't do this without you. It certainly isn't a bunch of money that's getting us through. It's just a small group of people who are dedicated to a vision. A couple of highlights. Again, our budget's approved by members. Nothing gets by unless you want it to. I think that's a wonderful thing. Our fund that was just a dream 20 years ago and 15 years ago had $1,100 in it. And a bunch of people thought it would never do anything and that it wasn't necessary. Now we've already had 4 loans directly to members. We've saved members thousands of dollars in fees, thousands more in interest rates. And I want to thank Faith and Larissa, who are on this call, for working with us, because we don't have this wonderful software. We're just kind of like tracking. And sometimes that's been a situation where we work together, but the VAWC fund has been instrumental there. We also invest almost $40,000 regionally and nationally in cooperatives, and we've been part of hundreds of loans to try to support the growth of this sector that we think is really important. And again, we talked about this during the member part of the meeting. We've got reserves for something like 10 months of our operations just sitting in those co-op funds, ready for us to need them in case we ever do. And it's something that I'm really happy about, because we get to say, okay, this is something that if we run into another COVID, if we run into something else that's like that, VAWC is going to be here. We're here for the long term. We can talk more about budgets if you have any specific questions. I'll just leave a moment right now in case anyone does. I'm also happy to talk afterwards. Right. So something else that's really important to us, another pillar, is spreading the message of cooperation. And we have an important duty to specifically to worker cooperatives as VAWC, but I also want to say that how we often leverage our relationships and our message is by joining in with other cooperatives so we can share that message together to the public. And National Co-op Month in October is a wonderful example of that. We got a lot more attention getting our articles out during that month because media is more friendly. More people are paying attention to cooperatives, and that's all because of the larger co-op community. We also get to have something like, I don't know, 3 to 5 educational spots a day on multiple radio stations because of something where Suzette was actually instrumental in making this happen. Co-op month ads specific for cooperatives during co-op month for WRSI, WHMP, and I think 2 other affiliated stations. So we really got to leverage, again, our co-op identity to reach broader audiences. And we always get more questions after that. We always get more inquiries. Those are wonderful things. So thanks to a bunch of you who are part of these things, helping us stay involved. Lastly, I wanted to say that we were part of the Bill Newman show co-op panel. I think they did 2 this year. Isn't that right, Suzette? There were so many co-ops that they had to have, there's usually this panel where they talk to everyone who advertised. They had to make it 2 hours this year. And that, I think, is actually a wonderful advancement, because we're trying to we want every hour to be about co-op, so we're building slowly. Before I hand it over to Tom, I wanted to open it up to have a moment for members and guests to share any questions about our impact this past year, in case that was something that was important to you, or if there was something in your cooperative you wanted to share, you can do that too. We'll also have some time for Q&A at the end of the meeting, and you can share something there if it's not directly related. But I always like to have a little moment in case members wanted to share something. Okay, it seems like you're set for now. I'm just going to make sure that I've got my little tech all set up for Tom. I would like to just say thank you and welcome to Tom Ivey. Tom has been someone who I've worked with in the past in a number of projects. Tom has been working with DotCooperation for many years. It was a new effort. I think Tom's vision and understanding of what cooperatives are and where we're going is exceptional. I think it's something where we really want to say that I'm proud to say, hey, this is something we're a part of. And even though, .coop is something that isn't free, it is something where that's an opportunity, I think, for a fairly low lift for us to be part of something broader. And before I share your slides, Tom, I've got them set up here. I just wanted to let you take a moment to introduce yourself so we know a little bit about you. And again, right now, I think it's midnight where Tom is, so double thanks.
Sure, not a problem. Hello, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here and to be able to come and speak to this network. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to come and talk and to engage with you all and hear your questions if you have them. My name's Tom, as as Adam said, and I joined the Co-op network, must be over 8 years ago now. And I've been working to promote cooperatives ever since then, primarily through my role here at .coop, where I work as an advocate for cooperative identity and the branding tools that we manage. I'm speaking to you now, as Adam mentioned, from the United Kingdom. It's just west of Oxford, if you know where that is. And really, I'm a born-again cooperator. Education on the model and how it works is pretty non-existent in the UK in conventional education. And awareness on the specific benefits is quite low as well, though we've got a few key success stories. So really, my understanding of the cooperative identity has grown from the experience in taking part in many workshops and programs exploring the cooperative difference and engaging in groups that have been looking to define it and to leverage it and suggest ways that we can better educate both each other and the public. So that's where I find myself now, and that's where I find myself speaking to you today. So I just wanted to check, Adam, well, first of all, have we got some slides ready? And can I see them on the screen now? I can.
You should be able to see them now.
Great, fantastic. And just so I don't ramble for the next 8 hours, how much should I keep an eye on the clockwise?
Yeah, so we're thinking that for the presentation part, something like 10 minutes. But okay. I want to open it up for discussion. So if we go back to these, that's fine.
No problem. No problem. Yeah, I mean, I could probably talk about cooperatives for 8 hours, but I'll spare you all the pain. So to start with, just to get everybody on the same page, if you're already using a .coop, please drop it in the chat. It's great to put faces to domains. So yeah, if you're using one already, stick it in there and let me know what you're using. I'd love to hear some feedback as well. To give you all an idea on just the DotCooperation system, first of all, simply the DotCooperation LLC is the global steward of the .coop and .credit union domain names and the global cooperative mark. And apart from being a provider of identity tools, we're also a resource for the cooperative model global movement. And we provide education as well on branding, digital expertise, and the cooperative digital identity. So we aim to really help cooperatives harness their potential by using the cooperative difference and working to create this common recognizable brand that Adam mentioned. And really, the brand is so much more than just the logo and the visual identity of the organization. It's really about how people feel, how they remember their interactions, how they're associated with their organizations, and then how we can turn that interaction into loyalty. There was a Harvard Business Review done in 2019 called The New Science of Customer Emotions, and that concluded that clients that connect with a brand are twice as economically valuable as those that are merely extremely satisfied. And really what they're talking about here is brand advocates and the golden ratio. 80% of your value will come from 20% of the people that work with you, and that 20% is much more likely to be brand advocates of what we do. And this is great news for us as cooperatives because we naturally create them. As long as people understand that we're different, then we can create those advocates. And that's very important, particularly for worker co-ops. Themselves a very powerful type of cooperative business, people working as owners. So by nature, very democratic. It's set up to sometimes directly address problems, mission-based objectives, and to create quality labor and to serve the community. From my research, I've seen that there's about 900 to 1,100 worker cooperatives in the US. You might have to correct me on that if I'm wrong. But this is really not an insignificant number. And as a sector, there's a definite opportunity to increase the collective bargaining power of the group. And if we consider the awareness and power of the US electric utility cooperatives, for example, how people understand their history and what they did to create that positive change. For reference, there's about 900 electric power cooperatives in the US. So similar numbers when it comes to the sort of sectoral weight. Shall we move to the next slide, Adam? There's lots of great .coop domain names coming in here as well, I can see. Some fantastic options there. We'll have to mention that later. Okay. Is this the next slide that we're on here?
It is, but I can keep going. I think this is just part of your intro already.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. That's right. So just a little bit of background. Here we are. This is our function and structure. Just so you know, we are 50% owned by the NCBA CLUSA and the International Cooperative Alliance. So those are our two ownership bodies. And you'll see from the timeline how that's operated. They own DotCooperation LLC, which is the organization that manages the verification of the .coop domain and also owns our first ever retailer, which is domains.coop, which many of you might have interacted with, particularly from the chat. I see you've probably interacted with domains.coop to purchase your domain. We do have a global network of hundreds of other retailers around the whole world, and we're looking to build that network to make sure organizations can have the help they need in their own time zones and their own language. That's a real priority for us. Next slide, please, Adam. So yeah, this is the timeline. It's a little chopped up, but yeah, there we go. We can see the whole thing now. So it was actually launched back in 2002. So it's quite long in the tooth as far as domain names go. And it was a collaboration between NCBA CLUSA and PopTel, which started the whole thing off. So NCBA CLUSA were there right from the start. And we changed our ownership restructure. The ICA came on board in 2012. And since then, we've launched the mark. We've vertically integrated in 2017, and in 2020 we acquired the .credit union domain name alongside. We now manage that. We acquired that from I think it's pronounced CUNA, CUNA, the Credit Union Association. And really, the .coop domain name has always been a pioneer. It was one of the first domains that was created when they were breaking the hold of .com over the internet, and having this space online just for cooperatives was seen as a very valuable asset. And we do rigorously do a verification process to protect that domain name space. And we've recently updated the verification process. So now that cooperatives, associations comprised of cooperatives, organizations that are majority controlled by cooperatives, and finally, any entity that its operation or practice area is principally dedicated to cooperatives can be a part of this namespace and take part in the .coop global brand. And yeah, so we can move on to the next slide. So yes, this was really a time when, 20 years ago, the namespace only had 20 names at the time. And the process that they went through was to really create this space all of its own accord, and it had to go through a process, and there was lots of other options that were available. And now that the .coop domain name has since 2002 been growing steadily, and we now register over 5,000 global organizations, and that number obviously changes over time, and we've been steadily growing since then. And next slide, please, Adam. Now, this is today's map of the internet and online. And as you can see, things are a lot more crowded, a lot more complicated. And this is why having a dedicated namespace that really captures the cooperative community is so important. We're seeing now with the rise of AI, easy content creation tools, this all means that messaging is as fast as a touch of a button, really, to put out there. And miscommunication, spam, and fraud, they're becoming increasingly complex and difficult to tell apart from the real thing. So a verified, dedicated digital identity, it's going to become even more important in the years to come. And particularly when you consider the massive push that we saw during the pandemic for global organizations to get online, to build in the communication and service redundancies, even if they'd operated previously just in the real world and had done so for decades. This was something that we saw a big push towards. And it's been really great to see, as Adam said, we see the resilience in cooperatives now and how they've been able to ride out in many ways better than other forms of business, the trials of that time. So how are cooperatives doing this? I'd like to go through a few quick case studies with you. These are worker co-ops. Some of these examples are quite comprehensive, so please don't feel overwhelmed if I start to go through a lot of different things that they're doing. Even the smallest changes can make a difference to your organization, like an email address or an email signature file, just before people start worrying about the cost of huge rebrands. There's we've got the Co-op 300, but there's a lot of organizations that don't have the resources for that. So this is Drivers Cooperative, and they're one of my favorites because they're based in New York. You might have used them, actually. I'm not sure how many of you are actually based in New York. I know Adam is. This is a platform and multi-stakeholder cooperative that are fairly new, but they've really set themselves up for a challenge because they're taking on giants like Uber and established taxi firms in the city. And this is really classic red ocean marketing. This is going into a crowded environment and trying to outcompete those that were already there. And to do this, they've led very much with their cooperative nature. This is their big difference in how they set themselves apart from their competitors. They're doing something interesting in the fact that they're both pitching at the established worker base in the city by offering better conditions through the worker owner model. And then also using that same benefit to then pitch it to their users, who are the end users of the product, the people that ride in the cars. So this is a multi-pronged approach, and it's this organization is growing fast, and it's all based around this seamless digital platform combined with a really powerful website. And they keep it very clear how their organization's working on their website. And they're using drivers.coop there as a domain name, tells people in a heartbeat exactly what they're about, which is extremely powerful. And that would probably be a very, very expensive .com if you wanted to grab drivers.com. And really, so this at its heart, this is about the best use of branding and how the branding can motivate the employees and improve the company culture and then make it memorable for those people that are interacting with it. And it becomes the foundations of the quality work that they have. It's a core mission and a great lever to use. So let's move on to Boston Cleaning Cooperative. I don't know if anybody has used these, if anyone's in Boston from the call, but they combine a number of factors which I believe contributes to a really, really strong cooperative identity. while also being really exceptionally clear primarily on their business activities and area of operations. So they're leading with a really strong domain name, bostoncleaning.coop. And that works so well because at a glance, even if you know nothing else about this organization, you're seeing them for the first time, you know already where they're located, you know their sector of operations, and you know the fact that they're a cooperative. So if you saw it on a business card or the side of a passing bus, then the clarity really helps them to be the first thing that you'd click on if you're in Boston, if you're looking for cleaning, and hopefully also if you're looking to work with a cooperative business. So if you see a website like this, it's really going to draw you in, even if you don't know maybe the details of what a cooperative is, but it's still very economically powerful. And I like the way that Boston Cleaning Cooperative have covered a lot of bases. They're very upfront, as you can see from the snippets on their website, in creating opportunities for their workers. It's good for attracting staff and attracting those looking for fair work. And this gives me a little bit of chance to do some learning as well on the community myself, to understand how cooperatives do operate in your area. If you could take to the chat briefly and just give me on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being nothing at all, and 10 being everybody's really clued in on it, on how visible and well understood cooperatives are in your city or in your state, both to the local network and the public. So just a number between 1 and 10, because this really helps me understand the challenge that we have in different areas. There we go. And I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat here to make sure I'm not missing any questions while I was talking there. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, you're right, Suzette. Exactly. There was a lag to make sure that the .coop was recognized as real when using emails like, nfca.coop. That's something that I think certainly back in 2002, they would have had real trouble with in when you type an email address in, sometimes you'd get that notification saying, is this a real, did you mean something else? And you go, no, I didn't mean something else. I meant .coop. That's something I think maybe 8 years ago I was still seeing. Luckily now, with the rise of thousands of new top-level domain names, things have really moved forward and become a lot more flexible to something that isn't a .org or a .com or a .country code. Interesting. We're getting a lot of different numbers here. It's higher actually than I often see when I ask that question, which is positive, which is good. So we're seeing a mean average about the middle. But yeah, I think Larissa make a really good point there. People focus on a particular sector sometimes, often the thing that's most obvious or visible in their area. In the UK, everybody knows about a food retail cooperative, but hardly anything about others. So that's great. Okay, let's move on to the next case study. Fantastic. Okay, so I actually had these slides out of order here. So so we've already covered the verification side of domain names, but I did want to take the opportunity to reiterate one of the key considerations in harnessing a digital identity at this point is that even if you don't want to change your domain name, and you say you spent a lot of money on a .com, for example, and there's orgs that do that. There are loads of things that can still be done to stake your claim to that specific space online. You can reserve the domain and connect it to a page on your website. You can throw up a simple one-pager to showcase business activity, or connect with other websites, which will create links and drive traffic and increase your impact and your search engine optimization. So when you appear in those Google results, if someone's looking for you in an area, there's much more likelihood that you're going to appear at the top where people can find you. And you can even work together to feature your particular local cooperative community. And I'm working at the moment with several cooperative development organizations to set up state names for the different cooperative states to showcase the activities and the sectoral interest that's going on in that particular area. So I think that's going to be very powerful for increasing visibility, even to outside the movement and to the general public. Great, I think I'm running low on time, so let's cover just a couple of the activities that .coop are doing at the moment. One of our main key pillars of our strategy this year is to develop our comprehensive directory and map of the global co-op movement. We have worked in partnership with another organization. And if we can go to the next slide, I can tell you a little bit about that. And that's Digital Commons Cooperative. We've been in partnership since about 2018, where we first were floating the ideas of having a digital directory that is open source, interlinked, and most importantly, live updated, so that it's not a snapshot that immediately goes out of date and no one will look at 6 months down the line. And this is a resource that we've been using since then to map the global cooperative movement. And we've been working with both the NCBA, CLUSA, and ICA to develop their own member maps based on the software. And if we go to the next page, we have a new project for this year for in celebration of the International Year of Cooperatives 2025. We are looking to create a global and continuously updated interactive map of global cooperative business. And we will aim to feature cooperatives and support organizations from around the world and develop a lot of interactive and interlinked data sets that are updated continuously to act as a hub to promote really the model strength. And we are starting to really use the International Year of Cooperatives 2025 as a great excuse to be able to put a lot of emphasis on this project and to use it as a tool to celebrate the cooperative movement and to increase visibility. But it is an open-ended project, and we are looking now and working with a lot of partners and interested bodies and cooperatives to really develop out the potential of this project and the potential of an integrated data set for all sorts of possibilities into the future, from circular economies to other platforms and projects built on top of it. And to the next slide, please, Adam. And as I said, it's built on open source technology, so everything is open source mapped and data shared to enable as wider input as possible, and really will enable all sorts of interesting future projects, hopefully, such as trade platforms. We're looking at co-op trade. All of it is tailored towards increasing P6 and getting cooperatives really working with cooperatives. I think that's the last slide. So yes, so I can't wait to hear from you, particularly if you have any questions or you're interested in anything that I've said. It's been a whistle-stop tour, but I am always open for conversations and chats, you know, about almost any subject. We work in so many different areas and across so many different things. So I'm sure you may have some questions now, which I'd be happy to answer. But please don't hesitate to reach out to Tom at identity.co if you'd like to talk more in depth. So thank you very much.
Yeah, join me in thanking Tom for his time. And I do believe there are a couple of questions. I know I have a couple, but thank you for your time again. I know it was it's really kind of you to pull this one off. Suzette,
it's my pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay, cool. Suzette, you're first to have a question, please.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Tom. I'm curious how the U.S. Fares in comparison to the use of .coop to other countries. Are, you know, how's it going at other places as well?
Yeah, well, I'm happy to report that the US is in a clear leadership position when it comes to use of the .coop domain name. I'd love to give you an exact percentage, but I know that you are in a clear majority for sure. The key areas that we seem to do well in are areas, well, like the US and Canada and certain areas of Europe. We're currently, I think, mainly because of probably where .coop started, we have that that success. Some sectors are doing exceptionally well as well. You've got your real clear standouts within in different sectors, particularly platform cooperatives and, like I said, the US electric cooperatives. Tend to be those retail cooperatives as well, tend to be the ones that that are really in a leadership position in the number of domain names that they register. But we're really seeing growth across the board in terms of the different areas that people are using the .coop domain name, and we are reaching out now and making it a priority to also get enough representation in areas that are economically poorer in the world as well. To ensure that they've got as much visibility as the more resource-rich countries.
Other questions,
Thanks.
other thoughts for Tom from people? You can just jump in. I'll just give people a minute. Tom, I have a question for you. I remember hearing you speak another time where you did have a little bit more time, and there was some kind of combination of art and science on, hey, when people see .coop in your email, they see that once, and then they see something else in your domain and they see that again. And there was something about developing this kind of awareness and this consciousness about co-ops. And for us, we're trying to emancipate labor. We're trying to have workers be in charge of their own lives, and we need to get our message out as much as we can. So I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that we try to understand and take away tonight.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think, you know, there's so many sort of different applications that you can really sort of look at how you would like to leverage a collective identity and a community, because there's different levels you can look at it at. The most straightforward, of course, is what I was talking about before, about branding and just sort of increasing visibility and shining a light on the unseen economies that we often see. And a lot of the research that's come into cooperatives has proven that there is an unseen economy out there. And if we can drive more cooperatives towards using digital tools and to connecting with other cooperatives around them, and also leaders in their sectors. So, you know, if a leader in a sector that's doing really well and a lot of visibility is using a .coop, then others in that area and that operations that are startups or just starting out or developing can really jump on the same bandwagon and adopt the same visual tells, the visual markers that connect them with those groups. Then that can be really, really powerful. And then some other examples of how this has worked is, I know that some sectors and areas of the cooperative community have all been making a really big drive towards adopting the same cohesive digital identity, because it really gives them a lot of collective power. They're able to lobby more efficiently. They're able to, connect with other communities, larger communities, or to make more waves by simply saying, this is our collective, and say they're getting on a directory with a map through the use of the .coop domain name. They can then take that map and showcase and say, this is the strength of our collective, and we are here, we want to make an impact. So that's something I know that several sectors are doing at the moment. They're making that drive to increase their collective voice. And then there's probably another 100 or more I can think of as well, but I hope that goes some way to answer your question.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I also just want to give a moment for people who, especially for a couple of people who are joining us who haven't spent a lot of time in VAWC meetings. You're encouraged to ask questions of Tom or me or anyone here.
Yeah, and I do have another point just to make on that as well. Just lastly, is one of the things that I've spoken about through some of the NCBA Closer events I did last year was really how an untapped resource the .coop domain name system is. If we consider how many .coms and .orgs have been registered and how people are really fighting to get a decent name these days for their business or their website, you can go out there and grab a really, really powerful domain name from a .coop for the standard price. I think in Circa at get.coop are doing $89 for a registration for a year. You can pick something up like corn.coop or wheat.coop. If you're in that sector, that's so powerful. And I did a session with a guy who was in the domain name sector, and he said he was visibly sweating when I was talking about this because in other areas of the domain world, that just doesn't happen. You don't have that that availability. So that's something that cooperatives can really lean into as an advantage they have. They can pick up something very, very powerful now for not a lot of money. So, which is helpful, particularly when you consider how many under-resourced the sector is as a whole.
Yeah, for us, I think again we're trying to just recenter. And 20 years ago, having a web presence was something where this was like a conversation. It wasn't even something we were completely sure about. And of course, where the world has gone is something we were lucky enough to have people like Alex from Pedal People and Dave and Josh from a tech collective to say, yeah, no, we're going to set it up, and we had social media and all that. But again, to try to have the discussion kind of come back to, this is part of a larger local and global effort to say, this is what cooperatives are doing. And like you were just saying, the thing that is exciting for me is to say, hey, if you're working in a particular industry, you provide a certain thing, you can get that domain and be the place that people go to when they want that cooperatively. And that's one of the things we're really trying to do, is to say, yes, we want to support each other. That's been the component of VAWC for a long time.
Absolutely, yeah. That principle 6, it comes back to it. I recently went through some training with the St. Mary's University, where they were talking about cooperative, and I'm gonna say their name because I don't want to steal their thunder. But one of their key points when they opened up the training was, they said the principle 6 is the cooperative superpower, and that's one of the key advantages that we have. So, having that cohesive identity, linking with this verified namespace, it's all about bringing that together and making that tangible connection with other organizations and those links, and being able to spot them at a notice. If you're looking at a local area, there's maybe thousands of local businesses, you can pick the cooperatives out at a glance, down your search results and stuff. Incredibly powerful, really useful from a cooperative standpoint. So yeah, I think it's P6 potential is unlimited.
Charity, I see you got your hand up, please.
Yeah, so my question is in regards to transitioning from like the .com, which is like what we have, to a .coop. Like, what sort of difficulty is there for clients and just the general public to figure out that transition?
Yeah, that's a great question, Charity. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And that's a really key question, because I think a lot of the times the barriers to making that change comes from the perception that it might be really tricky or a huge change to make. It would really depend on whether your organization manages its digital services through a partner or whether it does it itself. I know a lot of people do it themselves as best they can because they don't have the resources. And essentially, it's really easy to change a domain name. It's simply a case of just going into your customer area in your chosen retailer, which could be domains.coop, for example, and updating the information in there so that it points to your new website. And you can have different levels. So you can have the domain name as your main URL. That's where it's going to be most powerful. You can make that change so it's at the top of your website and on your branding materials. But you can also simply have several domain names pointing to the same website so that it'll work. You can still make use of the other tools, the email address, the being on the directory, the verification for the mark, but it's pointing to your website at the same time as your other domain names are too. And several organizations will have 2, 3, maybe even more. A lot of them really lean into brand protection by saying, I'm going to get every single domain name with my company name, right? If they've got a lot of money to burn. So there's different levels that you can go to, and you can really make a staged transition. If you didn't want to make that hard transition, you can sort of do it a step at a time, get used to it, make some changes, not to scare everybody, and then move over. So that's really the process involved. And yeah, a service provider would be able to help with that. And we're also available for any cooperative as an organization. We're a resource here to also help with that process. If you've got questions on how to do it and you need some advice, and we can be here. We'll give you some pointers on how to make that change. That's something we love to help with doing. So yeah.
Great, thanks for that, Tom. Any other thoughts or questions for Tom? Okay, so I put your email in the chat. What's it take to get involved?
To get involved with a domain name?
Yeah.
Or if they want to get started, I would say, well, the easiest way, I think, for organizations in the US, you can head to a domain name retailer like get.coop or domains.coop. I can put a few. I'll put a few options in the message, and you can read up about it there. And you can see what it takes to be involved. It's very straightforward. The verification process, we've made that as easy as we can. So, you know, and we're always open, available for questions. So I really say if you have any sort of thought process about doing this, you can always reach out to me, and I'll be there to give as much advice as you need. So yeah.
Right. Tom, I do think we have one last question from Ben, please. Hey, you're muted. I think you're muted.
Thanks.
Wow.
Thank you, Tom. There was a quick slide about building up a collective map, and that seems like that could be a really helpful centralized place to get out kind of the image of co-ops. How are you guys building that up? How are you approaching that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a good question. We're hoping it's going to be a really, really good resource. We're doing this really from the cooperative community inward. So we've started off with the software, and Digital Commons have been key in putting the system together that actually enables to use a directory. And you can see the directory in action now. I'll also put a link when I put some registrar links, and I'll put the link to the directory so you can see the one that we have for .coop in action. So we have the software available, and so now we're really undergoing the process where we're building the use cases for the project. So we're receiving feedback from organizations, how they use this, what potential can they see with it, how can it benefit their communities. And again, if you have any ideas, anyone on the call here, some ideas on how they would feel that this would contribute best to them, please also do drop me a line, because we're building those use cases right now. And we're putting it into the project plan where we've already mapped out sort of 5 to 10 key initial partners, which are going to bring their integrated data sets in as a start point. And we're looking towards the second half of this year to standing up the project as a separate website with its own map. And that will be the main sort of hub for the asset that will be developed. And we'll then look at bringing more and more organizations in and developing it, and really focusing on the fact that it's equitable, it's fair, and that everybody in the organization that is involved in the project is fully aware of the data and the policies required in that. So there's a lot of legwork to go, but so far there's been really, really positive feedback, and we've had a lot of people coming to us saying they want to get involved and to make it a success. So that gives me a lot of excitement, and I'm looking forward to communicating more about the next steps with everybody.
Tom, your dedication and energy over 8 years is truly remarkable. I really appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thank you, Adam. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I really, really appreciate the questions. There was some great questions. So yeah, I'll look forward to this to being a start point and to being more involved with the community. For anybody that might also be there, I think we potentially might be in person at the US Worker Congress this year, which I think is in Chicago. If I'm not.
Chicago,
Yeah.
September 14th and 15th or something, that second full weekend.
Awesome. Yeah. So it may be me, it might be my boss Violetta, who many of you may know.
Yep.
So if we can, hopefully we'll meet in person. That would be great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom. I'll catch up with you another time, but thanks again for your time tonight.
Thank you, Adam. Take care.
Thanks again for Tom for showing up for us tonight. And we just have 2 parts left of tonight's work. We've got our award ceremony, and then we've got a member talk from Pedal People. I'm really excited about that. I did want to share 2 quick slides we have from a partner from St. Mary's, which Tom already mentioned. And a lot of you already know I went to grad school at this program. I'm a big fan. Suzette went to this program. The Valley Alliance of Worker Cooperatives was the subject of a capstone research paper, which was instrumental in us understanding what we wanted to do. Urban Kroll wrote that in 2008 and 9. And I believe that our newest board member, Charity, might be going this year as well. There's a bunch of different ways you can do it. You don't have to do the whole grad program. You can do 1 year, you can just do courses, what have you. But I will have this slideshow go around, but I just wanted you to know of that. They're another sponsor. They're really great to us, and it's just a great thing to have. Okay, so I wanted to take that little. Slide.
Can I just say while you're there,
Yes.
Adam, there's actually a couple spots still left if anybody wants to tour an educational tour to Mondragon. If you happen to have an influx of cash and want to go in June.
Right, the crossover of worker cooperators and influxers of cash is usually a little on the low side, unfortunately. However, I was able to scrap together the money to go in 2008, and it was a life-changing event. And welcome, Ethan, to be able to go to Mondragon, where so many worker cooperatives are, to have such a large complex that's run by workers, but also is cross-sector. VAWC, their chain of grocery stores, is also with consumer cooperatives. It was truly mind-blowing for me, and I think was part of the reason why I'm still here 20 years later. Okay, I wanted to, so again, Ethan just joined us. We just have 2 parts left, our award ceremony and then a member talk from Pedal People. And this, I know this is like just a bunch of type on a white page, but there's a lot of people that have and still do make VAWC work. A lot of them aren't here tonight. There's a lot of people that I call from the Secretary of State office in Massachusetts to the actual Secretary of State in Vermont. They pick up because of who we are. They pick up because of our credibility and our integrity. And they talk to us because they share our vision. They share our vision of having labor be an instrumental voice in how the economy and society is unfolding and is directed. I also think that there's some connection here. There's a lot of difficult politics out there right now, but I just want to say that I think Bernie Sanders is keeping it alive as far as talking about worker ownership on a national scale. Do I want him to talk just about worker cooperatives? Maybe, but that's something that's new, just to have that on that scale. And I think we are part of a movement to try to make sure that people know that worker cooperatives can work together to run their own business better than anybody else. And I think that's what we all have here. So this award ceremony is really just an icing on a cake. We get to share a couple of moments of appreciation for people, and I'm really happy to share this with people. And if any of you want the printed version of this, we happen to know a printer. We're really thrilled to send it to you. We have 3 awards. The first one is named after Jesse Owens, an incredible activist and athlete who was, I think, the only one to win 4 gold medals and did it under incredible circumstances. We have 1 award dedicated to Mr. Owens about fastest payment of dues and of our fund. And sometimes that matters because at the end of the year, you know, we run a little lean and we've got money invested in the funds. And, you know, it's great when people pay so we can make sure that we can cover some bills. And I want to thank Oxbow Design Build for being fast, easy to work with, and informative. It's truly a pleasure to work with you every day of the year, but I did want to just shine a little light to say thanks for this. Charity, I know you're a big talker and you've spent so much time talking this meeting already, so I'll just move it along. So I'll just kind of keep that moving. But I do want to say thanks to Oxbow for doing that. I mean, you're all fantastic. This is kind of like, again, a cream of the crop just to get that done. Okay, our second award is about cross-sector collaboration. And mostly because of my timing, I wasn't able to get in touch with UMass 5 to get anyone here in advance. We've got a number of organizations that support us across sectors. NFCA has been our best partner for a long time. They're been phenomenal. I'm really happy to share that we have an award for UMass 5 Credit Union right now because they are, similar to Oxbow's dues last year, they're the first people to contact us back when we have any ask for a sponsorship. They're the first person to contact us back when we have any questions in the credit union sector. And that means a lot to staff and board with, you know, we all have other jobs. So it's really incredible to have a partner like that is a credit union in our region that serves businesses too. We have got 2, Freedom Credit Union, who we use for our banking. Is also high on co-op identity, but UMass 5, I think, does more. And there's a lot of different instruments they have out there. You can get a share loan if you want to buy a share for something. CSA, which is not a cooperative, but at least helps. But if you wanted to buy a share in a cooperative, you can borrow from UMass 5. They're ready for that. So anyway, I wanted to share this award. Emilia Romagna in Italy was one of the models we went after during that research that Urban did. Suzette, I see your hand up. Would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, recently we got a car loan from UMass 5, and I know they've had them up for a while, but they have the principles up on their wall. They have the co-op principles, which is a rarity for credit unions. So it was really cool. That's all.
Yeah, and just no, that's really important because again, like one of the things we're trying to do is to say there are centers of cooperation in our region, and one of them is run by workers themselves. And I think that, and Suzette was around for this too. I should probably just stop saying that, and people can just assume you were there for all of it. But in 2011, the first year of cooperatives was being discussed as a theme for the UN, United Nations theme of the year. And that's a big deal for us to be able to leverage attention and resources. And one of the first things we did, the Valley Alliance did, was to work with Urban, Suzette, and John Resk and Sean Kapilov-Jones at UMass 5 to found the Valley Cooperative Business Association. And that was something that we did during that year, during 2011, 2012, to say, hey, co-ops of all kinds can participate. And that's one of the things we have right now is that advertising we have in newspapers. And that's just one thing that comes out of that. So I'm excited about .coop and 2025. So anyway, Suzette, thanks for sharing that part about them printing the principles. Okay, our last award is something that's a little special for me. Happy to rename this one, but Julie Graham was the person who introduced so many people to cooperatives. Julie Graham was a leader in ways that I don't see very often, where you can feel so heard. You can be in a room full of different opinions, and she knows exactly where you are or knew, and was someone who could unite voices, disparate, different, diverse. And I think that to the extent that I've been able to serve VAWC, it's because I got to learn from her for so many years. So this award is named after Julie Graham, who has a bunch of awesome books with their co-author, Kath Gibson. So J.K. Gibson Graham. They wrote a bunch of excellent books out there. You should check them out. So this year we have 2 recipients. One guy isn't here pulling the card of their spouse being pregnant, but we did want to thank Carl of Oxbow again for their leadership on the board. It's been really fantastic working with Carl. And then of course, Suzette Snowcott. Again, we've talked about this multiple times already tonight, but Suzette, I'm just so thankful. And thank you for tonight. Does anyone want to share anything about those? Oh yes, Faith saying that they deliver orders to UMass 5, yeah. Okay, any other thoughts before we hand it over to Pedal People for a last little feature on members and pricing? All right, that's like a little emoji clap. I want to welcome Ben and Ethan. We've worked on a number of things together. I just want to thank them for taking the time to put something together for tonight. We had talked a number of months ago about what they did with their pricing, and I think pricing is going to continue to be a pressure item for all of our businesses. Of course, it already is. And what I found unique about Pedal People was that they figured something out on their own and it worked. And, you know, that's something to be celebrated. I wanted to just invite them both on. Please just take over and we'll have a couple of minutes for Q&A afterwards. This is our last item right up until 8. So again, thanks for coming and joining us. And I also want to shout out Ethan, who I think just got out of class and basically does the superhero thing where they switch clothes and jump right into our meeting and share their thoughts. So thanks to both of you. Please unmute and take it away.
Hey everybody. Yeah, again, I'm Ben. Ethan's here, but also Kara Jackson, one of our co-workers,
That's
is
right.
also here, and will be helping to present a little bit on this. I'm also going to drop the link to our public-facing kind of our webpage that kind of talks about the tier system as well, so you can kind of see what our customers see and the public sees. And that's just dropped into chat. But yeah, so this has been like a super exciting time for us in the past year and a half at this point. I was just talking with another one of our coworkers earlier, Brett, and we're, as you all know, like co-ops move at these varying speeds, and typically around consensus things can move slowly. And this was a really big thing that happened within our co-op that, in respect to timetables, actually happened really, really quickly, which is pretty impressive for the impact that it's had on us, and also that we believe has on our customer base as well. So the reason that this started kind of coming up, or that this project eventually around, is actually out of internal kind of voices that were coming up within the collective regarding worker pay. About, I think, winter of 2022, we had some people in the co-op who were voicing concerns about worker pay. Northampton has a very high cost of living. And so those people were asking for ways for the co-op to look at ways in that we could make it easier for us to afford living in town in the area. And one of those ways is obviously to pay ourselves more. And so we created a working group to try to look at solutions. There's 4 people on that working group at the time. And those people ended up looking at a few different options, but the main one that they really settled on was using at the time the wording was sliding scale system for payment. And then we ended up moving towards calling it a tier payment system. And they brought that up as a proposal, mostly because that it was a way for us to lead to potentially higher wages by raising money, in the hopes that by asking our customers to potentially pay within their income brackets, which at the time we also believed that a fairly high rate of our customers could be paying more based on their income brackets, that would happen. And that also, at the same time, we're also about to bump up the cost of our service for our customers as well. That also helped. But overall, implementing a tiered pricing system was meant to kind of match our mission statement, and to continue our mission of kind of challenging systems of oppression. And we're realizing that while we want to pay ourselves more, we also want to look at a system that is effective in supporting our community members as well to access our services, because we didn't feel it was right to just be providing services that few could access. Yeah, and so that's kind of how it came about. We ended up deciding, I believe, at a collective meeting in February to approve, February of 2023 to approve using a tier system. And we then went ahead and kind of like developing the system. It pretty quickly, if you look at the website, our website with the link, you can kind of see the different tiers. But we settled on 5 different tiers. And it's broken down. Tier 2 is meant to be the base, and then it goes up incrementally. There's wording that we ask our customers to look at and to fit themselves within those different tiers, and to find kind of where they would settle. Also, part of building up this tier system is the hope that there would be enough people that are paying a higher tier that it would supplement any kind of lower tiers, that where we would actually be not making as much money on the customer's service that they're purchasing, but it would be supplemented by an equal tier that somebody else is getting. So a 20% tier customer is going to be supporting the negative 20% tier customer below. see. Yeah, you got that. Yeah, and speak briefly, but Ethan, do you want to talk about how it was received, or kind of general feedback? Also, Kara, feel free to jump in here.
I can say a little bit. So after releasing this, we also, of course, had to contact the customers, which I forget if that was either a newsletter or maybe it was an email just about this, asking people to select their tiers and, of course, explaining the whole system. I'm sort of surprised actually by how well it was received. I am aware that there were a few people who ended up ending service as a result of this, but I know that Brett estimated this was something like 1% of our customers, which seems pretty low. And we also didn't know how this would actually work in practice. So this was all an experiment, and we were just hoping that we would, at least with the price increases, even if, no one was choosing higher tiers, if everyone hated it, we would still hopefully still earn enough to give ourselves a sufficient pay raise. And I think, we have had to do a decent amount of outreach to try to get customers to select a tier. And I think a lot of them, I don't think it's because they don't like the system. I think it's just because it's hard to get them to decide on something and just make contact with them. And so lots of people, I think Brett said about 40% of the customer base didn't select a tier. And so we just put them in the default category of no price adjustment. And I think the plan is maybe we'll try reaching out again, at some point and maybe their next billing cycle, if we think that's worth our efforts. And one other thing, maybe not on the reception, but in terms of the tiers, just to be clear, we're not asking for any proof of income or anything like that. It has income ranges here on the thing that's being showed on the screen. These are all just suggestions. And I'm pretty sure, just based on knowing some of my customers, they're choosing some things that have little to do with their income and more about our description of it, which in the smaller print under each one, which sort of has to do, a little bit with what it helps to fund, and then people may be thinking about what they can actually afford. And that was an important part of our discussions that I remember also just thinking about this, someone who is earning, at this high level of $250,000, if you are paying off your mortgage and you have a family of 4 people in Northampton, that may not actually be that much money, right? So we're really trying to let people self-select as much as possible. And then if there's anything in the conversation that comes up that, seems like it'd be a problem for them, we try to emphasize just choose a lower tier. Yeah. I think that's all I have on that. Do we want to, I guess, talk about the outcomes?
Yeah, would love, and again, we'll have some time for Q&A. And this is a great presentation. I know that it's a little detailed and we're at the end of the meeting, but it would be great to hear what the outcomes are, just so we can kind of see the fruits of what you did.
Ben, do you want to take that back, or I can also?
Actually, yeah, Kara, do you want to talk to that? I know you created some stuff.
Oh, great. Please, Kara.
I actually think I'm good with you guys presenting. I'm glad to have helped on the presentation, but you're doing a great job.
Sure, I can take that on then. Yeah, so one of the effects of all this is that we had a very large surplus, around from a year to year, probably about $100,000 extra in surplus in the collective. So overall, a pretty great benefit. Sorry for this notifications. And sorry if you can hear that. So the benefits of that have been that we immediately after we moved, when we realized that we're making this much more and we had this surplus, we used that to kind of like have a kind of more immediately some increase in fees that would have been transferred to our coworkers coming out of the transfer station. But of course, addressing the initial problem that we were talking about in December, which was trying to raise that minimum pay. And so we did that. And so now at the moment, all of our hauling work is paid at a minimum of $25 per hour. And all of our admin work is paid at a minimum of $25 per hour. And that was funded in purely based on these surplus funds that came in from this tier surplus. We also did the work, so we created this working group that kind of looked at these different options. We sent out a flurry of surveys to our co-op, which have been maybe kind of intense for some people to get so many surveys. But they got good reception, and we ended up filtering out a bunch of, or kind of taking proposals from our yearly retreat on things that people wanted to see. And then the working group ended up taking those, filtering out some of the ones that are of a lesser importance based on kind of our collective feedback, and then kind of either trialing some or fully funding some. So some of those are like, in order to boost our co-op benefits, we created a sick time shared pool. So where we previously had sick time, we boosted that by creating a shared pool of sick time that people can dip into if necessary. We also had, out of our last retreat, we had a very large item, which was looking at the sustainability of our co-op. And one of those is that we definitely, our co-op is hinged on the local transfer stations that we use. And so we funded a working group to spend time kind of looking at the feasibility of creating our own transfer station. So basically where we would take trash and recycling and other things. So that's currently moving forward. We also are trialing with these surplus funds a free bus pass system that workers can use, especially when it comes to trying to get to Northampton to do their work. So that's happening right now. We're going to get some feedback on that in about, I think, 3 months or 4 months. And then we're also implementing like a paid community service project. So kind of trying to maximize on kind of our community benefit as well coming out of this. And that working group is still working forward to kind of try and see what else we can fund, because we do have some more funds that we can fill it up with. So yeah, that's kind of where we've been at. It's been exciting. I also would say personally, it's very cool to look at this and see how receptive people were to it. I think we have to take into account that Northampton is also, and our customers are a bit of a self-selecting group of people. I think that in general, we have a wealthier demographic that uses our service. And so I think that's also part of the reason that we did make so much based on this tier system, which is great. And people were receptive to it. Like, we really didn't get a lot of bad feedback. So that was very cool to see.
Yeah, I just to start the discussion, like I also agree with a lot of that last point, and it could also be like this was successful due to like the nature of the business and like the system of billing and things like that. People are typically paying for their bill for trash like once every 6 months, I think is our standard. And so it's sort of something you're thinking about deciding once, like, and I wonder like how I personally would feel about like a tiered system if I was just if I was going into a shop that had a counter and I was ordering something, and like then they were like asking me my income levels and stuff and paying like that, like I don't actually know, but off the top of my head, like my reaction may be different if people were asking it based on that. Presumably there'd be more like explanation forthcoming and stuff like that, but yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank all three of you, and Kara, sorry to miss you at the first part. I agree. I think this is a brave move, and I think perhaps there are characteristics of Pedal People and its customers that we can understand more to see what is replicable and what isn't. But anyway, I just wanted to leave the last few minutes for any questions for Kara or Ben or Ethan, and to thank them for their contribution tonight. Too easy. I do think it would be something that the Valley Alliance should just take a look at. And I would love to learn more about how the results came out and how you measured them. And to see if there's something that we can try to mimic, you know. This is also something we've thought of at the board level about supporting organizations that can't pay all their dues or what have you, to develop a fund just for that. So it's reminiscent of something else we've been thinking about.
I think it's also worth noting that we have mostly residential customers. Those are homeowners or renters. So when we send out these emails asking for them to choose their tier, we point them to look at kind of basically the wording that we provide. But there's a whole nother level of customers that are business customers or landlords. There's a lot of multiplexes. And I believe we still haven't approached those customers, the business and the larger multi-customers. Yeah.
You did for us. I don't mean to interrupt, but we did receive Oxbow received the tier request.
Oh, sweet. Cool. By my time.
Well, we can also open this up to any comments for the rest of the meeting in the last 5 minutes. But again, thanks to you three and for your work in the community and for making this work for more people. It's so exciting that you actually just improved access to an important service. Suzette, did you have a question or did you ask it?
I didn't ask it. I did sort of have a question. I guess I was thinking about, obviously there's lots of sliding scale things that models that have been out there, but was there any particular other organization that you looked at that was helpful? And then I'm also thinking of replicating for other, like there's the compost co-op in Greenfield, and I wonder if they might be, how easily it might be replicable to them or others.
Yeah. If any, Ethan or Kara, if you want to talk to this. But yeah, I think we did use a couple other groups that I just had those links somewhere, just lost them. But we used 2 other groups mainly who have done a sliding scale tier system like this. But actually, for the most part, this was a pretty, I think, pretty scratch wording that the working group came up with. There's a lot of, it came to the collective for kind of some feedback on the wording. If I remember right, in those meetings, there was a lot of editing, wanting to make sure that it wasn't necessarily, I believe, like as directed to money, but there's like what you're making was a lot of, like, as you can probably see, related to trying to make sure that we tack this to like generational income as well and wealth. which was pretty important for us because it's hard to suss out just based on sometimes like somebody's like gross annual income, where that generational wealth sits. So that's where like student loans and mortgages and other things kind of play a factor. And we also, another cool thing that's I'm super proud that we did is we have like a custom tier 2. So if people have utilized this, but if they want to still use our service, they can ask for an amount that's lower than our lowest tier. And we've had a bunch of people use that. We used to have a financial assistance fund, and we've moved a lot of people over into these custom amounts so that they can still use our services.
And I've heard that it's potentially a bit difficult to sometimes convince people to take the below even amount, like the ones that reduce it. So like, that's just what I've heard. I don't actually work the secretary job, but sometimes it's like a lot of convincing people like, no, you don't actually have to drop your service. Like we really are okay with you taking this minus 20% category. That's why we're doing this whole thing. So like we can be paid well, and also like we can provide these services to people of different income levels throughout our community. You don't have to, you can't afford pedal people, it's like you don't have to then go to the truck-based hauler as a result of that. That's counter to lots of things that we're trying to do.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best notes we could end on. I'll hang out for another couple of minutes, but I just want to thank everyone for showing up tonight. I know the Wednesday night meetings are something we want to deal with sparingly. And in fact, we're going to think about moving our meeting time. So keep an eye out for a survey, but or just an email. But thanks so much. It's been really great. Keep your eye out for other things for the next 20 years. We're going to do a lot of thought pieces on that. We're going to try to get a lot of feedback. We really want to make sure that we're following the direction of our members truly. And that'll be an effort that we'll take up this summer, and especially leading up to September in-person event. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Adam. Good night.